So welcome to the stage, Kim Belair.
Hello. I'm Kim Belair. In my circles, I'm largely considered, I think, a relatively nice person. These are my dogs, Sage and Flaky. These are my cats, Tag and the Grey Boy. I really enjoy Lego. I collect skulls and taxidermy. And I also really like playing a lot of video games, including Elden Ring. By day, I am the crazed CEO of Sweet Baby Inc., the DEI-obsessed censorship mafia who is currently ruining and wokeifying all of the video games that you've ever played. Thank you. Thank you. It's hard work. If you haven't heard of Sweet Baby Inc., thank you. That's actually how I prefer it. But if you have, it's either because of the over 80 amazing and often award-winning games that we've worked on, or actually one of those, Usual June, was at this very conference. So yeah, you've either heard us from all of these wonderful games, or perhaps you're familiar with the nearly year-long hate campaign that has been waged against us as a team. Unfortunately, today I'm here to talk about that in a talk I'm going to call What Happens When You Get Harassed? A Sweet Baby Story. So I'm going to start at the beginning. Who is Sweet Baby Inc.? We are a narrative development company, and we are a team of narrative developers. What that means is that we do script writing, storytelling, narrative work for video games, and sometimes that means that we come in for writing punch-ups. Sometimes that means we're the entire writer's room for a project. Sometimes that means we're coming in very, very early on and helping them start the groundwork, the world building. But what I want to really stress is that all of our work focuses very heavily and very seriously on story. That is what narrative development is. We started out in 2018, but it was really in 2020 that we kind of came to any kind of industry prominence, and it was on a backdrop of the COVID quarantine sending everybody home from the office. Me Too sweeping through the games industry as various bad actors were named and shamed appropriately, I should say. And also the Black Lives Matter protests were in full swing. At the time, the industry was kind of responding in the way you might imagine, with a lot of corporate overpromising, but within the writing sphere, there were a lot of offers for portfolio reviews. Like, hey, if you're a marginalized or especially a black dev, we would love to give you a portfolio review. And I want to say I love portfolio reviews. It's something that we also do at Sweet Baby for free, so if anybody in the audience right now is looking for a little bit of a portfolio review or wants to talk about video games, we'd love to do that. But the problem with portfolio reviews is that they also assume that it's a meritocracy, right? They assume the problem is your portfolio and not the fact that maybe there's a lot of other reasons that you are not getting the gig. So knowing that there were a myriad problems to be solved, we created an email called talk@Sweet Baby Inc., and we just said, hey, if you're a developer who wants to get into the industry, if you're someone who's already in the industry and you want to talk, just talk to us. And so in that year, we ended up with a lot of people who we connected to, and we talked a lot about advocacy, we talked a lot about helping people get into the industry, and we also talked a lot about the importance of telling stories from a variety of perspectives, and especially of having those writers and those creators in the room to help you with that. And as we joined new conversations, as we worked on more projects, more people joined our team. And so in that year, or in those subsequent years, we grew from a team of only 5 to a team of 16 incredibly talented people. And during that time, as you might imagine, a lot of game teams were looking for guidance, both in terms of narrative, but also in terms of learning how to tell diverse stories and feature diverse characters. And so naturally, because we were kind of in that conversation, we helped them. Throughout the years, again, we worked on, as I said, a ton of games. For most of these, we did writing, story development. Sometimes we just kind of came on and did spot checks. But the thing that genuinely made me really, really proud of all of us was that we were living up to the title that I had wanted to. We were becoming true narrative developers, capable of taking on pretty much any task as far as it touched story on any project at any time. And that expertise was a result of all the different kinds of work that we were doing. For those not in the industry or not familiar with it, most game writers in their entire careers will see 5 to 10 projects as just a lifetime. And we would see that many projects in a matter of months. And what happens when you work on that many projects and you get to see the inside of so many processes is that you don't learn necessarily like, oh, here are the ins and outs of working in this specific company. You instead hyper-focus on narrative and all of its parts. And you get really good at it. You get really, really specific at it, and you become craftspeople. And funnily enough, as far as this company is concerned, that was actually my end game. I wanted us to become craftspeople because when I was a kid, I learned a lot about Carrie Fisher. And beyond her acting career, she was actually a very respected script doctor in Hollywood. And I remember finding that so fascinating and really, really striking because, quite famously, she was someone who struggled a lot with the eye of fame, but it was so comforting and interesting to hear that in this community of artists and writers, she was deeply respected just for her craft. And if I'm being honest, just as a creative myself, that's all I've really ever wanted. I've never wanted to be known by audiences, really. I've never wanted to be known by gamers, certainly. And I've wanted to be... I wanted to be known by game devs and writers especially. I want teams and studios and writers and creatives to think of us when they need a hand, when they want that more support. I want to be a game dev's game dev, and that's where I hoped it would be, but that is not what happened. Because in October of 2023, we had about 70 games under our belt at the time, but 2 of them, 2 very, very big ones, were about to drop within a week of each other. So on October 23rd, there was Spider-Man 2, and then on October 27th, there was Alan Wake 2, both big AAA games, and we had worked on narrative and character for both of them with literally years of work on Spider-Man 2, and we would finally get to announce them. We were very excited. In retrospect, we were actually comically excited because we had a couple thousand followers at the time, mostly game devs, and we were like, okay, it's time to stand up and be proud of our work. Wow. this is going to be really nice. And I remember even thinking that morning as we made these posts, like, I wonder if anyone's going to notice that, like, we posted about Spider-Man, we're also posting about Alan Wake. Like, will anyone put it together? Because I think our way of working at Sweet Baby, the kind of, like, teamwork that we do on so many different games is really, really unique. I think it's really cool. I think people will be excited about it and about our craft. So I decided to do a cheeky Google and see, like, hey, can anyone put that together? The Google went bad. I shouldn't have done it because rather than any praise or people going, wow, how did you do it? Or just, hey, a narrative development company, what does that mean? I'm really interested. We were instead found by kind of 4chan and the worst people on Twitter. And looking back, there is a funny element to it where I go like, people were kind of talking like, I've discovered a secret Canadian company. Like, these are the guys who did it. And the discovery that they had made was actually like our public-facing website that we advertise our services on and which you can go to right now if you'd like to collaborate with us or just learn more. It's not hidden. And if it is, it's very bad because it sits at sweetbabyinc.com. But literally within a few hours of me seeing that first post, we were not only being accused of, forcing a black person into Alan Wake, which one is cool, but we didn't do, and also of putting pride flags into Spider-Man's New York, which again, so good, love to see them, but we were not responsible for them. But suddenly we were being told that we were, funded by BlackRock and that actually we weren't a narrative development company. We were a DEI company, some kind of vaguely defined like censor, and that we were here to use all of the power we had amassed to force companies to go woke. And obviously that's a very baffling like understanding of what work for hire is. I'm not sure how they imagined we did it or how the contracts would be drawn up for it, but it kind of didn't matter because it just kept evolving and spinning out of control. And suddenly the conspiracy was just alive. They were finding photos of us, sometimes our families or our contractors. They were doxing me and other members of the team. Anyone calling these attacks out as doxing was accused of doxing themselves or lashing out. That's me. I'm the CEO. I have issues. But yeah, this went on for weeks and then months. At its peak, which was somewhere around like February, March of this year, we were getting something like 300 emails a day, which admittedly some of those are going to be spam or bots or whatever it is, but they were often accompanied by death threats, threats to our family. We did have one bomb threat made to the police that they contacted us about, and at best, the nicest thing you would see in some of these spaces was that we were a punchline. But any defenders were really, really shouted down quite quickly. And in moments when this movement couldn't dig up like another reason to attack us, they would just kind of move on to other groups who they perceived to be like us. All while doing the work of erasing all of those people's and our actual jobs and interest and papering over it with kind of that rallying cry of far-right supremacy, DEI. And as ridiculous and stupid as it all was, I actually was not prepared for the escalation of it when noted buffoon and Twitter CEO Elon Musk decided that he would chime in with his very cool thoughts. Yeah, some very cool, very good thoughts in there. Lots to think about. So this was hard the whole time. Like, not since the beginning, it wasn't great. But we were receiving countless emails, all this constant hate. It was targeted enough to feel disconcerting, even when it was kind of silly, and it was also kind of drowning out the support. But when Elon chimed in, it really made me realize the scale of it, because the richest man in the world was suddenly turning like the Eye of Sauron onto 16 people trying to make a pretty modest living in the industry that they love, and he was arguing for our collapse. And this meant that, it was when this happened and when it got bigger than this, you can tell I got it early as a screenshot, but yeah, it made us realize that this was huge. We were being attacked in a massive and coordinated campaign of harassment, and that sucks. But it does get me closer to the question of what happens when you get harassed. So first of all, just as a spoiler, like what happens when you get harassed is it sucks. I can't recommend it. If I had to rate the experience, like 1.5 stars probably. It's not the best. But more specifically, what happened during all of this, if I can kind of dig down into this review, is we lost our voice. And we didn't just lose our voice as a collective, we lost our voices individually because people on our team were either hounded off of social media or they get attacked so consistently that it just becomes frustrating to use. It's not enjoyable to hop on anywhere and get that wave of hate. So within Sweet Baby, beyond what we do for work, there are authors, there are comic book creators, there are TTRPG creators, game designers, people who have other work that they want to share with the world that they should be allowed to share with the world. But just for existing within our company, just for working on the games that they do, they were attacked. Even contractors, people who literally worked with us for a spot check, a week or a couple months. But there was really, really nothing we could do. And as silly as it is, and as little as I miss the current Twitter, as little as I regret leaving it, the loss of frivolity and frankly dumb bullshit is actually a little soupçon of dehumanization. Because I would love to post a picture of my latte or my dogs without people going oh, I guess coffee is woke now, and hey, that dog is pretty gay. But we weren't allowed. We are no longer allowed to be in the conversation without what amounts to mass targeting. Look at him up there. And don't get me wrong. People did defend us. Some very, very great folks, often writers, game devs, people who we had worked with, people we had not worked with, who could see this thing for what it was. But while I appreciated the defense and the team appreciated it so much, that support is still really hard to feel in the panic of the moment. And so instead, I felt really guilty. I felt responsible. Like, I felt bad, not for doing the job that I love, but for building a space that was meant to be protective and creative for a bunch of people and having it turn into something that, through no fault of our own, saw my friends and my loved ones and my colleagues and my coworkers just viciously and brutally hurt. I felt bad for making a company at all. I felt bad for believing in it and for speaking on it. People would come up to me, especially at events like I went to GDC, and they would very kindly tell me that they were inspired by me or by us and by our collective strength and our resilience. And I would say thank you so much, but deeply I would feel very ashamed. Which intellectually I know is wrong, right? We are doing something good. We are writers and designers of tremendous skill and tremendous experience, and we've never censored anything, nor have we ever wanted to. Frankly, if you really want my opinion, I think largely games could be hornier. I think they should be darker. I think they should be stranger. At the core of my approach here, and the approach that we take as a company, I genuinely believe that representation is not censorship, it is innovation. Diversity in narrative makes things more intense. It can make it more visceral and more real. It doesn't have to always make something more wholesome or softer. I really do believe that by opening up to new perspectives, by getting folks in the room, we actually push more boundaries and we get more real. But what happens when you get harassed is it doesn't matter what you believe. What's also frustrating is that it doesn't matter what they believe either, because so much of this campaign is just misinformation. It's assumptions and lies about who we are, what we do, and what we want. We have worked on 80 games, as I said before, and I think that's pretty cool, but to them it's something closer to 200. We have our little fingers, our woke little fingers, in every pie in this industry, and that's the other thing that happens, right? They take away your power in some ways, but they also ascribe to you this enormous power. They will claim that you are rich, that you are backed by, shadowy cabals, government orgs. They claim you have the ability to force their favorite studios to bend to your whim, rather than the truth, which is that studios and teams hire us to make stories better. Not woker, but actually better. And believe me, when this first started, I was so worried that studios would stop working with us. I worried we seemed too toxic. I worried we seemed too dangerous, too beleaguered, too much of a risk to work with, but that is not what happened. What happened was, at least privately, every team we worked with was quite supportive. The external silence, I'll say, was deafening at times and also frustrating, but such is the way of corporate. And it was still nice fundamentally, I think, to realize that studios, teams, and individuals still wanted us around and still saw our value. Which I will say, though, is also a very disorienting experience, because what happens when you get harassed is that you realize that most of it is just noise and that nothing functionally or fundamentally changes. People say, I'm so sorry for what you're dealing with, but could I get that script on Monday? And you say, yeah, it sucks. Anyway, I will get that to you Monday, though, because there is no time off. There is no stop in video game production. You can monetize a hate video, but there is no hazard pay for harassment. And we are not, despite what you may have heard, so moneyed that we can just take a break or take a vacation and chill. So by day we worked, and meanwhile, all around us, the noise continues. And this is here because I remember one evening I was coming home and I was like, all right, I've dealt with too much today. I'm just going to relax by going to the Yakuza subreddit, which I have to say 99% of the time is a wonderful space. It's very funny and the people are pretty nice. But not even thinking, I scrolled past a joke about Sweet Baby Inc. And the thing is, in service of this great subreddit, it was actually well-intentioned. It was not a joke intended to make fun of us. It was intended to make fun of the campaign. But the strangeness of it still, of it being everywhere, of it feeling inescapable, but meaning nothing in my day-to-day, was too utterly bizarre. And beyond just having to mute a wonderful, wonderful safe place for myself, I also wanted to quit. I wanted to leave the company. I wanted to do something else. I'll tell you that running a self-funded business in a very volatile industry is very hard on a good day, especially when you do something with us. But it's hard, let alone when Elon Musk is crawling bleary-eyed out of his money pit to tell us that we deserve to go broke. It's a disaster. But what happens when you get harassed is also that you realize all you have is each other. And you can maybe call it trauma bonding, but when there are no prizes and no funds and no vacations as compensation, right, and the only thing you have on your plate is suddenly your widely derided work, you also start to make more space for each other. You start to recognize that the work will sometimes feel thankless, but that you still love it. And you love it, fortunately or unfortunately, because you get to do it together as a team, and for us, that means we're doing it as Sweet Baby Inc. What happens when you get harassed is that you forget who you are, but then you remember. We are writers, we are storytellers, we are narrative designers, we are creative, we are passionate, we are funny, and we are doing this because we love it. We love it so much, in fact, that we'll do it even through the worst months of our lives, because our lives ultimately are about stories. And as I wrap up, I want to say that that's frustrating too, because it makes it really hard to talk about. There is an instinct, I think, in all of us, or at least a desire to tell a good story. And this whole thing, whatever it is, isn't a very good story. There's not much of an arc, and frankly, there is no resolution as yet. Sometimes a story is just what happens. And what happens is you get hurt, you feel bad, you get tired, you get scared, you get angry, you get sad, you get really, really good at Elden Ring. Thank you. I'm great at it now. But after that, you get back to work. So what happens when you get harassed is that you have to live with it and they have to live with you. And so we'll see, I guess, what happens next. Thank you for your time.